Now is the winter of our discontent, made glorious summer by this son of York. My mother thought I was terrific. My name is Joe LoGrippo. I am a Buttonman in Godfather I and Godfather II. Well, I was born in the Bronx, went to school there, public school. And then I went to Bucknell University in Lewisburg, Pennsylvania, where I got involved in the theater. A couple of guys who were involved with the drama department in my fraternity asked me to audition for a play. I said I'd never been on the stage. They said, doesn't matter. So I auditioned. And then I was in the last 6 plays until I graduated. I guess it was 1964. I got fed up with my office job. I decided to see what was going on in New York, and there were a lot of acting schools. And I ended up going to the Max Slater Academy, and I joined, and we did some scenes with the other students. And I soon discovered that I was the best one in the class. So why not? The only major films I was in really were the 2 Godfathers and The French Connection. And The French Connection, I had one scene with Fernando Rey, a lovely man. It was a wonderful day. Bill Friedkin was the director. And I was a toll booth collector at the Triborough Bridge. And Fernando Rey drove up and paid the toll, gave him directions to Wars Island. That was the big scene. But it was a wonderful day because he was so amiable and friendly, and Friedkin couldn't have been nicer. But he decided to cut the scene. So those are the only major movies that I did. All won Academy Awards. It's not bad. Well, there was Lou DeGimo was a casting agent for extras and small parts. DeGimo called me for The French Connection, which was prior to The Godfather. And that's how I got that one. But then they called me for The Godfather to be one of Sonny's bodyguards, and they said, you work with Sonny Works, which was fine with me. And then I lucked out because I was in an eating scene with about 8 or 10 other Buttonmen. And the only principal in that scene was Ava Vagoda, who was Tessio. But he cut it. But still, if you have lines in a scene and they cut it, you're still on the casting list. So you get residuals, which is good. Well, the first one, I didn't have a contract. They just called you, said we're doing a scene with Sonny, and we want you in it. Are you free? Thursday. If you're free, you worked. But, so it was only 6 days, and 2 of them were when Sonny got himself killed. The scene where Sonny comes out of the house, I was guarding the front door, and Duval was there. He introduced himself to me, saying, I understand we have a scene together. Correct? So I was lucky enough to be picked to stand by the door, and then Sonny came charging out, and Duval tried to stop him, which didn't happen. So I followed Duval down the path, and he told me, go after him. So that's how I spent that day with Duval. In the second one, I had many days with Duval. Many. Matter of fact, George Lucas showed up once, and we had Duval and him had a conversation. I contributed maybe 3 sentences in 20 minutes. And he told Duval he was working on a new project, a space fantasy, and it was going to have animation and stuff. Well, you know what that is. It's called Star Wars. He didn't have a name for it at that time. That was my 20 minutes with Lucas. Some of the Buttonmen thought he was in trouble with the studio, Coppola, and he might get canned, which I understand was the case, although I was not privy to any inside information. It was just gossip amongst the Buttonmen, and what the hell did they know, And it ended up blowing over because the movie was so good. So the second one, he was in total command. First of all, he wrote the screenplay, and they weren't giving him arguments about, locations. And they even gave him an argument about the music in the first one. I don't know how you can. The music is perfect. So anyway, there was always a guy in the first one, like a watchdog, and report back to the Paramount executives what was going on. And he didn't want him there, but they kept him there. Anyway, he survived that rather well. And the second one was clear sailing. Godfather II, I got interview through Frederick Forrest, who was a friend of mine for many years, who had worked with Coppola in Conversation and a couple other things. So he got me the interview, and I had an interview with Fred Roos, who was Coppola's executive producer, and Coppola himself. And I had a nice interview, but nothing happened. And maybe a week, 10 days later, Roos called me and offered me the part of the Buttonman. He said, there's not much of a part, and it's only a 1-week guarantee, and you'll have to pay the difference in the airfare from New York to Reno. So if it was only a 1-week guarantee, I would have made beans. But fortunately, it lasted 6 weeks, which was good. The second one, I had a contract. So there was no ifs, ands, or buts about that. There was no overtime either. Of course, I was on set every day. Of course, Coppola didn't know where he was going to put the Buttonman if he needed him in a scene. So we were transported to the set every day, 6 days a week. It was usually the assistant director who said, here's what you got to do in this scene. I didn't have that much interplay with Mr. Coppola. Although Coppola did on occasion say, you got to do this or you got to do that. But everything, a lot of it was improv. He wasn't sure we were even going to be in the shot. And then he'd decide, well, I need a Buttonman here. So we shot a lot of scenes, which were cut. There was a bungalow next to one of the main houses, and Roos used that as an office. And he didn't care. He was there every day. Like I said, I was there 6 days a week. We started the end of September and ended the beginning of November. Every Saturday was a college football game on, and he'd put it on, and you could go watch, because we were only a few feet from the set. So if they needed us, they called us. And we used to watch college football games on Saturdays. And he didn't care. An invited audience at the Gulf and Western Building, which is, Columbus Circle in New York. But they had a real theater in there that sat at least 500 people, maybe more. And I was invited. But I was also in a play at Equity Library Theater. The show started at 8:30. I had to be at the theater by 8. And the film started at 7. So I said, well, all right, so I'll see 40 minutes of the movie and then head up to the theater. And then there was a whole hassle about getting everybody in their seats. And for 40 minutes I waited, and I couldn't wait anymore, and I left. And as I was walking out, Mr. Fred Roos was at the exit, and he said, well, there's not much left of the Buttonman. And he wasn't lying. And he said, next time it'll be better. Of course, never was a next time. Well, just my relationship with Duvall in the second one. Since all our scenes practically were together, and Mr. Coppola decided to leave them all out, I got to know him fairly well. He was a regular guy, and there was nothing pretentious about him. Pacino was more closed personality, and I really didn't have any scenes with him. Although we did have that chess match, but that wasn't in the film anyway. We were just waiting to be called if whatever he was filming that day. Because as you can see from the picture, we're not in costume. So we both had a strong feeling we weren't going before the cameras that day. So, and it's a conversation piece. But people always pay a lot more attention to me when they find out that I was in them, even though they can't find me in them. It's a matter of working on something that's an icon now. Those two films. And people are impressed. Much more so than The French Connection, but, even though that won an Academy Award too. But when you say Godfathers, they perk up. So, anyway, it's made me a minor celebrity. It's nice being part of a landmark, or whatever the hell you want to call it. A legendary film, and working with Coppola. Although I say, I doubt if he even remembers my name now. So, anyway, it's a story with that.